Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the smoky warmth of a Viking longhouse, where the wind howls across frozen fjords, but inside it's cozy enough to lull even the toughest raider into deep, dreamless sleep. You're about to see why people from Viking times, those axe-swinging, fur-wrapped, frost-kissed souls, might have had the best sleep in all of human history. And honestly, if you could swap places for one night, you'd probably never want to come back. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments what city you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand at the edge of a snow-dusted clearing somewhere in 9th century Scandinavia. The air smells of pine and salt from the nearby sea, sharp and clean enough to sting your lungs. Overhead, the night sky isn't black. It's a deep metallic blue studded with frozen stars. In the distance, the silhouette of a longhouse glows faintly through the swirling frost. You take a step toward it, and the crunch of snow under your boots sounds almost too loud in the quiet. Inside, the longhouse breathes like a creature, warm, rhythmic, alive. You duck beneath a low doorframe and the air changes immediately. Smoke curls toward the rafters, carrying the scent of resin, roasted grain, and something faintly herbal. Your skin prickles from the sudden shift in temperature, from bitter cold to enveloping heat. The floor beneath you is timber, uneven but solid, and the walls are thick with moss packed into the seams to keep the drafts out. You can hear people murmuring softly in the half-dark, the occasional creak of wood, the snort of a horse in the attached stall. It feels less like entering a house and more like stepping into a heartbeat. The Viking longhouse was never meant to be grand. It was meant to be alive. The design was both brutal and brilliant. A single rectangular chamber stretching 30 or 40 paces, its roof sloping low enough to trap heat, its central hearth glowing with a bed of coals that never went out. The fire didn't roar. It smouldered, constant and steady, casting a gentle amber haze over the planked walls. The Vikings weren't just warriors or farmers. They were master survivalists who understood the art of comfort better than most modern humans with heated mattresses and electric blankets. They built warmth, not luxury. You move closer to the hearth, feeling your face flush. Around it, raised wooden platforms line both sides of the room. Benches by day, beds by night. Families sleep shoulder to shoulder here, sharing furs, stories, and breath. The sound of quiet conversation melts into the low pop of firewood. Someone yawns, another hums a tune under their breath, and a baby sighs in its sleep. Outside, the world is pure winter, but inside this shared chamber you feel the strange security of belonging. If you glance toward the ceiling, you'll see how cleverly it's built. The ridge beam runs like a spine across the roof, while narrow vents near the gables let the smoke escape without stealing the warmth. Chimneys aren't a thing yet, but balance is everything. Enough air to breathe, enough smoke to survive. It's the original version of climate control, nature's engineering perfected through trial, error, and probably a few near-fatal fires. You wander along one of the sleeping platforms. Woolen blankets and animal hides are piled in uneven heaps, each one thick enough to swallow you whole. The bedding smells faintly of lanolin, that natural oil from sheep's wool, mixed with the musky scent of fur and a trace of juniper smoke. You lift a corner of the pelt and run your hand across it. It's heavy, coarse on one side, soft on the other, like something that's seen too many winters but refuses to give up. Beneath it, the wooden platform still holds warmth from the day's fire. In a world without glass windows or glowing screens, the longhouse is both womb and fortress. The only light comes from the fire and a few shallow lamps carved from soapstone, filled with animal fat. They flicker weakly, painting the room in uneven golds and shadows. You can just make out a carved post near the entrance, its surface worn smooth by years of touch. Protection symbols, maybe. or fragments of rooms once believed to guard the sleepers from whatever stalked the night. There's no concept of privacy here. You're never alone in the Viking night. Sleep is communal, a shared act of trust. Parents, children, elders, and even a few animals curl up together under layers of wool and skin. That closeness isn't just emotional, it's strategic. Every exhaled breath adds to the warmth. Every body helps the next one survive the frost. In modern terms, it's crowdsourced insulation. And yet, despite the roughness, there's beauty here, an elegance that comes from understanding how to live with nature instead of fighting it. You hear the faint whistle of wind through the vent and realize how perfectly tuned this space is. Too tight and it would suffocate, too loose and it would freeze. The Vikings lived in balance, their architecture a dialogue between fire and frost. You imagine yourself lying down now on one of those beds, the pelts heavy on your chest. The air is cool enough that you can see your breath rise and vanish in the firelight. The wooden beams above you are dark with soot, and faint carvings of dragons coil between them, half hidden by shadow. The warmth seeps slowly through the layers until it reaches your bones. The room hums quietly with the sound of sleeping bodies, soft, synchronized breathing, and the occasional shuffle of fur. Somewhere outside, the wind hits the walls and scatters snow like sand across the roof. But inside, the world is still. You realize how rare this kind of silence is. No hum of electricity, no traffic, no restless glow of phones, just the sound of life, slowed to its gentlest tempo. This is how the Vikings ended their days. Not in isolation, but in rhythm. The Longhouse wasn't just a home, it was a body that breathed with them, kept them safe and sang them to sleep through the long northern night. The fire would burn low, the air thick with the smell of pine resin and smoke, and the darkness would wrap around everyone like a single shared blanket. Outside, wolves might howl, ice might crack, but inside you're wrapped in centuries of human instinct, heat, light, and trust. You shift under the furs, your body relaxing into the rhythm of the fire's crackle. Sleep comes not as an interruption, but as a continuation of life. The Vikings, for all their brutality and hardship, understood one thing perfectly: rest is survival. And survival, when done right, feels like peace. You wake to the quiet pulse of embers still glowing red in the center of the Longhouse. The fire never truly dies. It just hums lower, softer, like an animal breathing in sleep. Around you, shapes shift beneath heaps of fur and wool. Someone stirring, a child turning over, a muffled sigh that vanishes almost as soon as it appears. It's not silence, not quite. It's the sound of 100 tiny domestic symphonies blending into one peaceful rhythm. The air carries the faint tang of smoke and pine tar. The warmth from the hearth moves upward in gentle currents, never quite reaching the corners where frost still clings to the planks. You can feel it, the intelligent balance of heat and cold that keeps the space alive. Viking builders didn't draft blueprints. They used instinct. They knew where warmth would pool and where it would escape, where smoke would hover and where air would slide through. The architecture is almost organic, grown rather than built. You stretch your limbs and notice how the bed beneath you responds. Not a mattress, but a wooden platform raised just high enough to dodge drafts and layered thick with woolen blankets, animal skins, and maybe a little straw for springiness. It's simple, practical, but your back doesn't ache. It's warm without suffocating. The trick, you realize, is layering, not the kind you see in modern catalogues, but a deep understanding of how heat behaves, how air pockets trap warmth, how fur breathes better than feathers, how wool wicks moisture without losing insulation. Somewhere, a woman moves quietly, adding a log to the hearth. The flame leaps briefly, painting her silhouette in gold. Vikings treated fire like a deity, temperamental, generous, and deserving of respect. It was never fully extinguished, not even in summer, because a dark hearth meant a cold home and a vulnerable one. The Longhouse fire was as central as blood in a body. It connected everyone. If you step carefully along the center aisle, you'll notice the pattern of the beds on either side, raised wooden frames separated not by walls but by carved beams or hanging firs. Each side mirrors the other, creating a perfect corridor of warmth and humanity. In richer homes, the beams might bear carvings of serpents, ravens, or protective runes. In humbler ones, just smooth wood polished by touch. You pause near the doorway. The wind outside moans softly against the planks. There's no glass to keep it out, only a leather flap and clever positioning. The longhouse faces the wind just enough to breathe, not enough to invite the storm inside. Every element here, wood, wool, smoke, body heat, conspires toward one purpose, survival that feels almost luxurious. People think of Vikings as hard and savage, but you can't live through a northern winter without tenderness. You see it in how the bedding is tucked, in how boots are left neatly by the wall, in how the fire's ashes are banked carefully for reuse. Even the animals have their place near the door, their warmth adding to the communal heat. A cow shifts, exhaling softly, and the air smells faintly of hay and life. It's a strange kind of beauty, this world where nothing is wasted, where every flicker of warmth and whisper of breath is shared. The longhouse isn't just shelter, it's cooperation made visible, a design born from necessity, but perfected by empathy. You imagine the nights when storms raged outside, wind screaming, snow piling against the walls. Inside, people huddled closer, stories rose over the roar, and the glow of the fire turned the timber walls into amber. Someone might be singing softly, the kind of song that's more hum than melody, just enough to blend with the wind. It's not about performance, it's about keeping the night at bay. You look around and realize that this architecture doesn't separate people from nature. It mediates between them. The longhouse is half human, half landscape. The earth floor in some homes still smells of soil. The beams are trees only slightly changed. Even the light feels alive, flickering like thought. You think about how sterile modern bedrooms can feel, sealed boxes with perfect temperatures and no heartbeat. Here, every breath, every shift, every creak reminds you you're part of something breathing back. A faint crack in the roof vent lets a ribbon of cold air slide in, and it brushes your face before rising to join the smoke near the rafters. The balance is precise, deliberate. You can almost feel the science behind it, the subtle physics of temperature and density, mastered centuries before thermometers. The Vikings didn't need measurements. They had survival as proof of accuracy. You settle back onto your bedding, the furs heavy but comforting. Somewhere nearby, someone murmurs in their sleep, a half-formed word that fades into a sigh. The fire shifts, a soft collapse of wood into glowing coal. You can't tell where the smoke ends and the dreams begin. The longhouse hums quietly, not as a building, but as a shared body made of warmth, trust, and rhythm. Outside, the wind presses its face against the door. Inside, the fire's breath wins. You close your eyes, knowing that even in a world of frost and darkness, these people built warmth that could outlast centuries. By now, the night outside has deepened into something endless, a blanket of ice and shadow stretching over the fjords. Inside the longhouse, the fire burns low, pulsing like a slow heartbeat. It throws amber waves across the carved beams, highlighting soot patterns that tell of years spent breathing the same smoke. Every longhouse in the north carried its own fingerprint in the roof, dark halos, ghostly swirls that marked where each winter's fire had breathed. You lie still beneath the firs, watching the faint light move across them like the glow of memory. Fire in the Viking world was everything. It was heat, yes, but also time, companionship, medicine, even mood. Each household treated it like a living relative, sometimes demanding, sometimes merciful, always respected. The day revolved around feeding it, the night around watching it fade. It dictated how you slept, how you dreamt, when you woke. You could almost call it the first circadian clock, a rhythm written in flame. Look closer at the hearth. It isn't a small, tidy fireplace tucked into a corner. It runs long and low through the heart of the room, set into the earth and lined with stones blackened from generations of use. Smoke doesn't rise straight up. It drifts, meanders, seeking its path to the roof vent like a spirit searching for its way home. If you watch the way it curls and disperses, you begin to understand why the Vikings placed their sleeping platforms just high enough to stay beneath the densest haze yet within reach of the warmth. A single foot higher, and you'd cough through the night. A single foot lower, and the cold would gnaw your bones. Centuries of refinement led to that perfect height. When night deepened, the hearth wasn't extinguished. Someone, usually an elder or a light sleeper, kept vigil. They'd bank the embers with ash, just enough to smoulder through the small hours. It's a quiet duty, half ritual, half meditation. Imagine sitting there with a carved poker in hand, the glow brushing your face as others sleep nearby. You hear only the soft breathing of your kin, the occasional crack of settling timber, the whisper of wind pressing against the walls. The air smells of birch smoke and lanolin, and life. You can feel the rhythm of it, slow, steady, ancient. That rhythm shapes everything. Without electricity or artificial light, the Vikings lived inside nature's heartbeat. When daylight faded, so did activity. There was no sense in resisting. Melatonin, that invisible clockmaker, flowed easily in darkness, uninterrupted by blue light or glowing glass. You didn't scroll yourself awake at midnight. You drifted naturally toward rest. The body didn't fight the night. It folded into it like cloth. Even the flicker of flame worked in harmony with that biology. Firelight, scientists now say, carries a wavelength that soothes rather than stimulates. The Vikings didn't know the word circadian, but they lived by it perfectly. Every hour near that dim red glow nudged the mind towards surrender. And the beauty of it is that they didn't see sleep as wasted time. They saw it as part of the same cycle that grew crops, calmed seas, and kept the soul steady. Of course, fire was danger too. One errant spark could turn this world to ash. That's why the hearth was always tended carefully, banked low before people settled to sleep. Its management was a science, though no one called it that. The smoke told you everything. If it hung too thick, you needed to open a vent. If it thinned too fast, you'd lose warmth. Imagine learning that language over years until you could read the air as clearly as runes. A faint crackle pulls your gaze to the coals. They glow like a bed of jewels, reds fading to orange, then grey, then sudden flares where a log collapses into itself. The shadows dance against the walls, shaping faces that aren't there, twisting into beasts and gods and dreams. The Vikings believed those shapes meant something. Fire was a messenger. It revealed and concealed depending on how you looked. Some nights the flicker might echo the wings of Odin's ravens, or hint at the serpents that encircle the world. Even superstition served a purpose. It gave the night texture, made fear manageable, gave dreams a doorway. And then there's the scent. They burned more than wood. Juniper branches for protection, pine resin for cleansing, herbs for calming. Juniper in particular was prized. Its smoke was thought to repel bad spirits, to guard sleepers from nightmares. You could almost call it a Viking version of aromatherapy. As the fragrant smoke lingers, the longhouse smells clean, sacred, alive. You can picture them now, men and women settling down for the night, their faces soft in the glow. A child stirs beside them, soothed by the rhythm of the fire. The older ones murmur last words before sleep, a prayer maybe, or a small joke that makes someone chuckle quietly. Then stillness settles in layers, thick and comforting. The only movement is the slow shifting of light across skin and fur. You close your eyes, the heat at your back seeps deeper, meeting the cool air at your face. The sensation is perfect balance, warmth and chill, safety and awareness. This is how they slept, in equilibrium with their environment, not sealed away from it. Every flicker of flame was a lullaby, every sigh of smoke a breath shared with the gods. In the Viking world, fire didn't just keep you alive, it taught you how to rest. The fire's glow fades to a low pulse, and the longhouse settles deeper into night. Outside, snow drifts against the walls in whispering waves, muffling the world beyond. Inside, it's warmth and breathing, and the slow, quiet sound of bodies sinking into the kind of sleep that only hard work and honest exhaustion can earn. If you had spent a day as a Viking, you'd understand why this rest runs so deep. Theirs wasn't a life of idleness. By dawn, muscles had already been tested, hauling nets from icy water, splitting wood, hammering iron, weaving thick wool on upright looms. There were no gym memberships, no step counts. The labor of surviving in the north was so complete, so relentless that every tendon, every joint hummed with purpose. You imagine it now, the ache in your arms from rowing a heavy oar through cold spray, the stiffness in your back from carrying timber or turning soil that's half frozen, the sting of wind on your cheeks as you gather livestock in the grey light. The cold doesn't just bite, it burrows, forcing your body to fight for heat. And when the day is over, when every part of you has worked to the edge of its ability, sleep doesn't come as surrender, it comes as reward. A Viking's day was an orchestration of movement. From the first light breaking through the vent in the roof to the last echo of the evening horn, you moved, even stillness was earned. The transition from work to rest wasn't sharp. It was a slow decrescendo. As dusk approached, fires were stoked, food was prepared, tools hung up with quiet ritual. The household gathered for stew and mead, stories, laughter that came easily but never loudly. And by the time the bowls were emptied and the fire dimmed, exhaustion didn't feel like collapse, it felt like peace. Modern life forgets this rhythm. You fall asleep fighting the noise of screens, the leftover adrenaline of deadlines, the blue glow of devices that trick your brain into believing it's still noon. But here, in this longhouse, the only light is firelight. It dances across the beams, slows your breathing, lowers your heart rate. Every sensory cue whispers that the world has earned its rest. The Vikings may not have known about melatonin or circadian synchronization, but they lived in perfect alignment with both. When daylight vanished early, their bodies followed. When it lingered past midnight in summer, so did they. There was no guilt in rising late in winter or working long in summer. It was simply what the sun asked. You couldn't defy it. And because of that obedience, you never felt disconnected from time itself. By now, the air inside the longhouse is dense with warmth. The smell of wool and smoke, the faint sweetness of stored grain, the musky comfort of animals sleeping nearby, it's a scent of life continuing, even in rest. You can hear a horse shift its weight, a dog's sigh, a baby's soft murmur, answered by a mother's quiet hum. There are no walls dividing this intimacy. The longhouse turns the family into one body breathing together. Somewhere near the hearth, an older man stirs. He rolls onto an elbow, pokes the coals, then settles back down. It's a small motion, barely audible, but it sends a ripple through the house. The warmth stirs, the shadows dance again. For a moment it feels like dawn. But no, not yet. There's still time before morning. You can feel the layers of sleep here. Deep cycles without alarms. No sudden jolts or synthetic sounds. The mind follows the body's rhythm, diving, resurfacing, diving again, like a ship on calm water. There's a reason archaeologists find Viking skeletons with healed fractures, calloused joints, and dense bone, signs not only of strain but recovery. They worked hard, yes, but they healed well, and healing needs rest. Every night, this firelit chamber became a repair workshop for the human body. The warmth soothed inflammation, the quiet soothed nerves, and the dark rebalanced whatever the day had worn down. Sleep wasn't luxury, it was maintenance. And here's the thing, despite all that labor, Vikings didn't chase productivity. They didn't measure output in hours. They worked until the work was done, then they stopped. It's that simple. There's no guilt attached to stillness. When the day ends, it ends. That mental clarity, the absence of unfinished emails, glowing notifications, invisible tasks, might be the single greatest sleep aid in history. You stretch under the furs, feeling the imagined ache of their lives fading into the slow tide of warmth. Around you, everyone sleeps close, Shoulder to shoulder, foot to foot, breath to breath, the heat radiates softly, shared through skin and fabric and fur. Outside, the blizzard may rage, but inside, the air is thick with contentment. For a moment, you understand it. The Viking secret to the best sleep in history. It wasn't their bedding, though that helped. It wasn't their diet, or their rituals, or even the silence. It was that everything they did through the day, every swing of the axe and pull of the net, prepared them for this. They didn't earn sleep through exhaustion. They invited it through alignment. And as you drift again, half awake, half dreaming, the line between work and rest dissolves. The fire sighs, a faint ember collapses, and you think, maybe this is what balance has always meant. Morning in the Viking world doesn't begin with an alarm. It begins with light, the slow, reluctant kind that crawls through smoke vents and paints the air grey. You open your eyes to that dimness, unsure whether it's dawn or just a lighter shade of night. The fire's heartbeat still glows faintly in the hearth, reduced to quiet coals but stubbornly alive. You can smell the dampness of snow melting on the roof and the faint sweetness of the ash beneath it. Someone shifts beside you. Another person yawns. The longhouse is awakening, but gently, as if the entire building is stretching with its inhabitants. No one rushes. Time here doesn't start with pressure. It starts with warmth. The world outside might be freezing, but inside there's still the residue of shared body heat. The wooden walls creak softly, expanding with the faint rise in temperature. You breathe it in, that smell of life continuing. You glance toward the ceiling and see a ribbon of smoke curling lazily upward, drifting through the vent like a final sigh of the night. It's a reminder that this architecture, primitive by modern standards, is quietly perfect. Every draft, every gap in the wall has purpose. The cold never fully leaves. It lingers, demanding respect. That balance, the dance between heat and frost, keeps the air moving, fresh enough to breathe without losing the comfort of warmth. Someone near the fire stirs the embers with an iron rod. Sparks leap like tiny stars, and a new log catches flame. The light ripples across fur and wood, gold returning to the world. Around the room, people start to rise, pulling on wool tunics, brushing off sleep as easily as snow. You realize that the Vikings didn't need coffee. The cold air itself is enough to wake every cell in your body. When you step into that chill, it's like plunging into pure energy. Breakfast isn't a grand affair. It's porridge thickened from barley or oats, sometimes sweetened with honey if fortune allowed. There's the smell of warm milk, the sharp tang of smoke-cured fish, the faint bitterness of ash still clinging to the pot. The hearth doubles as kitchen and clock, marking the start of the day by the smell of food rather than any ticking device. You can hear spoons clinking against bowls, someone humming under their breath, a baby laughing somewhere near the wall. Outside the door, light spreads slowly across the snow. It's not bright, but it's clean, a kind of light that has to be earned. You can almost feel the temperature of it on your face, pale and cold, reflecting off every drift. The horizon glows faintly pink where the sea lies, and beyond that, mountains sleep under their crowns of frost. For the Vikings, this was beauty, harsh, elemental, and honest. You step outside briefly, wrapped in a heavy cloak lined with wool. The first breath of the day hits you like an awakening slap, sharp, pure, invigorating. You can hear the distant calls of crows, the crack of ice, the faint movement of people starting their chores. The longhouse behind you exhales smoke from its vent, like a giant animal waking from hibernation. Every morning begins this way, not with rush or panic, but with rhythm. And maybe that's the real secret to Viking sleep. It wasn't just the warmth of the fire or the weight of the furs. It was continuity. They didn't live in the fractured time we do, where the day and night are constantly at war. Their lives were one continuous breath, from dawn to dusk to dawn again. Even waking up was part of resting. Even work was part of peace. When you return inside, the longhouse glows brighter. A few shafts of sunlight find their way through the small openings, striking the soot-black walls and turning them gold. The warmth is fuller now, not from fire alone, but from people moving, talking, laughing softly. There's a sense of belonging here that you can't manufacture with architecture or design. It comes from rhythm, from routine, from centuries of living as one heartbeat. You look around and realize something else. The Vikings didn't separate the sacred from the ordinary. Eating, sleeping, working and storytelling were all stitched together by the same fire. They didn't need meditation apps or sleep playlists. Their lives were the playlist. The low hum of voices, the rhythmic scrape of spoons, the gentle roar of the fire, all of it lulled and awakened in perfect measure. And as the longhouse door opens to the day, a gust of cold air rushes in. Instead of shivering, you feel grateful for it. The contrast, the reminder that warmth means nothing without cold, brings balance. You understand that the Viking world wasn't about comfort for comfort's sake. It was about harmony with what existed. They didn't conquer the cold, they danced with it. Later, when night comes again and the same fire is lit, you'll see how the cycle completes itself. The longhouse breathes in, breathes out, the fire brightens, dims, the people rise, sleep, and somewhere in that steady rhythm, life finds its deepest peace. Evening returns slowly in the far north, the sun reluctant to leave but the shadows patient in their waiting. You step outside and find the sky stretched wide, painted in streaks of violet and gold. The air is sharp, crystalline, carrying the scent of snow and distant pine. The light lingers low, grazing the frozen earth before it finally fades. And when it does, the first stars appear, so bright, they seem close enough to touch. By the time you step back inside, the longhouse feels alive again. The fire has been fed, and its light ripples across familiar faces. A pot of stew simmers quietly, filling the air with a savory warmth that erases every trace of frost from your bones. People are talking now, low and rhythmic, their voices blending into something softer than song. You realize that for all the centuries separating you, the scene feels strangely familiar. Humans gathering at day's end, telling stories, leaning toward the light. It's what we've always done. You settle near the hearth, and for a while you just watch. The flame bends with every breath of air, its movement almost hypnotic. Children lean against parents. Someone sharpens a blade, another mends a torn tunic by firelight. Outside, the storm gathers again, but inside, time slows to the rhythm of wood and flame. You begin to understand how this pattern of life shaped the Viking soul, not all fury and conquest, but quiet endurance, domestic grace hidden beneath the legend of iron and ice. When the meal is done, the pot is pushed aside and the house begins to dim. The lamps are trimmed low, just enough glow to see the faces of those you love. Someone begins a story, a tale of old gods and giant wolves, of battles fought in endless twilight. The children listen wide-eyed, half in fear, half in wonder. The adults smile at the familiar parts, each word a thread connecting them to ancestors who told the same tales in the same rhythm long before. As the story unfolds, the light flickers, shadows crawl across the walls like living things. The carvings of dragons and serpents in the beams catch the firelight, their eyes gleaming gold. You can feel the heartbeat of mythology here, not something distant, but something alive in the very air. Sleep in this world isn't escape. It's continuation. To dream is to meet those stories halfway. When the storyteller finishes, silence follows naturally. Like snow settling, people start to curl up under their furs again. The room shifts from brightness to embers, from chatter to whispers, then to breathing. You lie down, still warm from the meal, the sound of the storm outside muffled by the thick walls. The fire sighs once, a long exhale that fills the room with light one last time before dimming to a red pulse. You close your eyes. There's something extraordinary in the way this world fades, the way sound softens, light melts, warmth spreads. You can almost feel your heartbeat syncing with the rhythm of the longhouse. The Vikings didn't measure time in hours, but in sensations, the crackle of wood, the cooling of air, the weight of fur. Sleep was never an interruption here. It was the night breathing through you. And though the world outside rages with snow and wind, you're safe in this cocoon of warmth and humanity. The air smells faintly of resin and smoke, of wool and earth and something sweet, maybe honey or mead left too close to the fire. Your body drifts downward, pulled into a slow tide of dreams. Outside, the aurora begins to move, green ribbons swaying above the world like the gods themselves pulling threads across the sky. The Vikings believed these lights were the reflections of Valkyrie's armor, the glow of battle turned into beauty. To sleep under them was to lie in the company of eternity. You don't fight to stay awake. You surrender completely, letting the world cradle you as it has cradled countless lives before. This is how the North teaches peace, not through stillness, but through endurance softened by warmth. You realize that in the language of the Vikings, rest wasn't weakness. It was preparation for another storm, another dawn, another voyage. And perhaps that's why they slept so well. When morning comes again, it's grey and muted, the kind of light that never truly feels like day. The storm outside has left a white silence over everything. The fields, the roofs, the sea frozen at its edges. The longhouse breathes softly, still warm from the night before, its timbers groaning under the weight of snow. You wake to the faint hum of movement, the fire being coaxed alive again. The shuffle of boots, the low murmur of voices that sound like continuation rather than beginning. It's easy to forget that the Vikings' world wasn't constant adventure. It was mostly waiting, working, enduring. Sleep was their truest luxury. The moment when the day's cold loosened its grip and the mind slipped into softer territory, and they respected it. There were rules, unspoken but understood. Never let the fire die completely. Never sleep too far from warmth. Never forget that rest is as essential as courage. You sit up, pulling the fur from your shoulders. The air nips at your skin, reminding you that the fire's glow is not a given. It's a privilege earned every single night. Someone has already gone outside to gather wood, and when they return, the smell of fresh-cut birch fills the air. Birch burns clean with a light that seems to carry sunlight trapped from summer. You hear the hiss as it meets the embers, then the faint crackle that signals another cycle beginning. As breakfast simmers, a thin porridge, a scrap of dried meat, the house fills with conversation. People talk of weather, of sea ice, of whether the goats will kid early this year. There's laughter, but it's quiet, practical, easy. No one here rushes to fill silence, because silence is part of the rhythm. You begin to understand how peaceful it must have been to live this way. Not easy, but whole. Every act has meaning, because it connects directly to survival. Every hour of rest is both earned and necessary. When the chores are done, and the day has stretched into its slow northern pace, you find yourself thinking about the psychology of all this. In a world that demanded cooperation, sleep was communal. It wasn't just lying down. It was belonging. You trusted those around you not to harm you while you were vulnerable. You shared body heat, shared dreams, shared the same breath of air filtered through smoke and wood. That intimacy must have built bonds stronger than any blood oath. At night, when the wind rose again, the same ritual repeated. The fire was stoked, the furs arranged, the house slowly dimmed to its ember-lit quiet. But now you start to notice what else lived inside that stillness. Story, song, memory. Vikings believed dreams could carry messages from ancestors or gods. The Huga, their inner self, might wander in sleep, bringing back wisdom or warning. Dreaming wasn't dismissed. It was part of existence. You picture them lying there, their minds half in the world of firelight, half beyond it. Perhaps a farmer sees his lost brother, offering advice about the coming harvest. Perhaps a mother dreams of her daughter's future voyage. The air in the longhouse thickens with invisible stories, as if sleep itself becomes a shared ceremony. Each person in their own way meets the divine in darkness. Outside, the aurora shimmers again, faint tonight but visible through a gap in the roof, green and blue waves moving soundlessly across the stars. For a moment you can almost believe they are what the Vikings thought, the spirits of warriors riding high above the world. You lie back down, listening to the timber creak, the fire sigh, the soft rhythm of breathing. No clocks, no deadlines, just heartbeat, heat, and sky. And you begin to understand why people from Viking times might have truly had the best sleep in history, because their nights were not interruptions of life. They were part of it, because their homes didn't isolate them from nature, they let them breathe with it, because their exhaustion was honest, their comfort earned, their silence shared. And maybe, just maybe, it wasn't the furs or the fire or even the architecture that made their rest so deep. It was gratitude. Gratitude that the roof held, the fire burned, and the night passed safely once again. Night descends once more, but by now you've come to expect it. The cycle feels natural, the dimming of light, the hush that follows, the glow of flame that pulls everyone inward. The Vikings didn't fear the dark the way modern people do. To them, night wasn't emptiness. It was a return. The longhouse became smaller, softer, its rough wood glowing like honey in the firelight. Shadows replaced walls, and the boundaries between waking and dreaming began to blur. You settle again on the sleeping platform. The furs are cool at first, but warm quickly under your body, the heavy smell of lanolin and smoke pressing close. Someone nearby hums a tune too soft to follow, something ancient and circular, no real beginning or end. The sound melts into the wind and into the low murmur of a story still half told from dinner. Vikings loved stories the way others love prayer. A good tale kept fear at bay and lulled the room into the kind of peace that made sleep possible. The fire sighs, drawing smoke into slow spirals that drift toward the roof fence. It's hypnotic. Every motion of the flame mirrors breath, every ember's fall a quiet heartbeat. The heat near your face fades toward your feet, a natural gradient that feels designed rather than accidental. These people understood comfort, not as indulgence, but as harmony. Every element of their world, wood, wool, smoke, darkness, existed in perfect conversation. You think of how strange it is that modern sleep, with all its conveniences, feels harder to find. You have soft beds, electric heat, endless entertainment, and yet your mind resists stillness. Here, surrounded by nothing but necessity, you feel peace unfold easily, like a muscle unclenching. Maybe simplicity isn't primitive after all. Maybe it's precision of a different kind. Someone shifts beside you, muttering in sleep. The sound is joined by the faint creak of timber, the whisper of snow slipping from the roof, the distant bark of a dog guarding the threshold. There's a rhythm to it all, a deep, unspoken meter that connects you to every sleeper in this house, to every generation that lay beneath the same beams and stars. You close your eyes, and the longhouse becomes a ship adrift on an ocean of wind. The fire is its lantern, the breathing around you, its oars. You drift between awareness and dream. In this state, time softens, centuries feel thin. You can almost sense the continuity, the fact that humans sleep, despite all invention, has always been this same surrender. The Vikings called their soul the hugger, and they believed it could move beyond the body in dreams. Maybe that's what you feel now. The hugger loosening, wandering into the night, meeting the snow, the stars, the whispering gods above. The air is so still that you can hear your heartbeat, and for a fleeting second it matches the crackle of the coals. Outside, the aurora stirs again, green ribbons rippling through the black sky, reflected faintly in the frost on the longhouse walls. It's as if the world itself is dreaming. The storm has passed, leaving only quiet, and the snow now glows under the starlight like silk. You imagine the ancestors watching from that glow, their shapes shifting in the wind, approving of the order restored, fire, rest, renewal. In this darkness, you begin to understand the final truth of Viking sleep. It wasn't about comfort at all. It was about trust. Trust that the fire would last, that the roof would hold, that the people beside you would wake when danger came. To rest deeply, you had to surrender completely. The Vikings did that every night, because survival demanded it. Your body loosens. The furs press down like the weight of the world, but it's not a burden, it's protection. The warmth sinks deeper. The mind drifts outward. Sleep comes not as an escape from life, but as proof that life, even here among ice and storms, is safe for a while. And that, you realize as your thoughts dissolve into the hum of the longhouse, is what true rest feels like. Not luxury, not silence, but the certainty that for this moment, nothing more is required of you. The night passes as though time itself has decided to rest. When your eyes open again, you're not sure whether it's morning or still part of a dream. The air inside the longhouse is pale with the first light of dawn. Frost clings to the inside of the roof beams where the smoke condensed overnight, glittering faintly like captured starlight. Someone near the fire is already awake, coaxing the embers into life with practiced patience. The rhythm of crackling wood greets you like a heartbeat, resuming after a long pause. It's astonishing how naturally everything continues. No alarms, no artificial hum, just the slow return of warmth, light, and sound. The Vikings lived by this flow, the turning of fire to ash, ash to light, light to work. Sleep didn't end with abruptness here. It faded like snow melting. You stretch beneath the furs, the weight familiar now, your body molded into its rhythm. For a moment, you think how deeply human this simplicity feels, how perfectly designed for rest it all is. Around you, others begin to stir. A man sits up and yawns, rubbing the soot from his hands. A child crawls toward the fire, clutching a carved wooden toy. Someone opens the door, and a burst of cold floods in, crisp and clean, slicing through the warmth, just enough to remind you of the outside world's ferocity. But no one flinches. They simply adjust more wood on the fire, more movement, more life. It's easy to see now how hierarchy even entered rest. The closer you slept to the hearth, the higher you're standing. The family's patriarch or matriarch nearest the warmth, children and servants farther along the walls where draughts whispered through the gaps. And yet, in the darkness of sleep, all those lines blurred. Whether chief or thrall, everyone shared the same air, the same fire, the same heartbeat of survival. You might command ships by day, but at night you were simply another breathing body under fur. The social design of the longhouse, half practical, half symbolic, ensured that rest was never isolation. There was no my room or your room. Privacy was a foreign concept. Instead, there was proximity, trust, mutual reliance. Everyone's warmth kept everyone else alive. And with that came a quiet equality that only sleep could provide. When you hear the rhythmic breathing of 50 people all layered together in slumber, power loses its meaning. Only the body matters. Only the breath. As the morning grows brighter, someone begins to speak softly about the night's dreams. It's a casual exchange, but meaningful. An old man describing a vision of a white horse by a frozen lake. A woman recalling the whisper of her mother's voice. Dream sharing is as natural here as eating. They believe these visions are communications from the Disigi, ancestral spirits watching from beyond. To them, sleep isn't an end to thought. It's a dialogue continued in another language. You realize how advanced this thinking is, how modern neuroscience would later describe sleep as restoration, processing, healing. The Vikings already knew. They honored it through ritual, even if that ritual was as simple as tending a fire and whispering to their ancestors before lying down. You can almost hear the echo of those whispers now, words lost to translation but heavy with gratitude. Outside, the wind calms. The snow's surface gleams like silk beneath the first thin slice of sun. The sea, still half frozen, catches the light in trembling shards. You step outside, drawing your cloak tight, and feel the shock of cold air slap your lungs awake. The longhouse smokes gently behind you, alive and breathing. For a moment you wonder how many nights like this one it has seen, How many lives began and ended under its wooden ribs? If history teaches anything, it's that comfort isn't luxury. It's wisdom. The Vikings found it in balance, in community, in surrender to rhythm, and maybe that's the real reason they slept so well. Their world didn't demand constant wakefulness. It allowed rest to be part of living, not separate from it. You turn back toward the longhouse and catch one final breath of its air, smoke, pine, wool, and memory, and you think, this is what home means, not walls or warmth or safety alone, but continuity. The same fire, the same breath, the same peace, carried forward like a secret too beautiful to ever be lost. By the time the sun sets again, the rhythm feels eternal. You know what comes next before it happens. The gathering, the soft laughter, the wood placed carefully on the fire, the world outside fading into quiet white. Each night in this place feels both ancient and immediate, as if time itself bends to watch over the longhouse. You sit close to the hearth now, your fingers stretched toward its warmth, and realize that every flame you've seen here has been the same one, kept alive, passed on, fed by generations who refused to let the dark win. The air smells of resin and wool. The fire crackles a living drumbeat under the low ceiling. Outside, the snow glows faintly blue in the moonlight, but no one notices. All eyes are drawn to the heart of the room. The family settles in layers again, furs rustling softly, the day's fatigue melting into shared stillness. You can hear someone plucking a few notes on a lyre, the melody too slow to name, too gentle to remember. It's not music for the mind, it's music for breathing. And as you lie down, the thought occurs to you these people, so far removed from modernity, have perfected what the rest of the world has forgotten. Sleep here isn't indulgence, it's gratitude turned physical. Every small comfort, the rough blanket, the lingering warmth, the safety of voices nearby feels earned, cherished, held with reverence. You imagine the feeling of lying here as snow piles higher outside, knowing that no matter how long the night lasts, the fire will last longer. The flicker of light softens, shadows climb the beams like slow-moving tides. The carvings on the posts, wolves, ravens, coiled dragons seem to stir their shapes alive for one last instant before dissolving into the dark. You breathe deeply, feeling your lungs fill with the scent of the room, pine smoke, wool oil, the faint sweetness of barley stew, and something else beneath it all, perhaps history itself, lingering like warmth that refuses to fade. If you listen closely, you can hear layers of sound stacked through centuries. The same murmur of sleep, the same creak of wood, the same fire breathing beneath snow. The longhouse has outlived its builders, its children, their children's children. Yet here you are, caught in its rhythm, part of the same ancient inhale and exhale. You begin to understand that this was never just a home, it was memory made solid. You shift under the firs. The weight settles you, grounding you. There's no loneliness here, no distance, just the closeness of shared life and the assurance that rest is deserved. It's strange to think that the so-called savages of the North slept better than the kings of later centuries. But you can feel it. It's true. Their secret wasn't technology or comfort. It was alignment. Every act, from cutting wood to stirring stew to closing their eyes, belonged to the same rhythm. The fire dips low. Someone murmurs a last word to the gods. A thank you. A wish for calm seas tomorrow. The room grows still. The sound of wind fills the gaps where speech used to be. Your eyes close. In this final moment, you see it clearly. The snow beyond the walls, the smoke rising through the vent, the soft glow on fur and skin, the small miracle of warmth surrounded by cold. The Vikings didn't conquer the night. They befriended it. They found rest not in defiance of the dark, but inside it. And as the last ember flickers, you understand what that means. True rest isn't the absence of struggle. It's the peace that grows when struggle has meaning. You breathe out, slow and even, and let the darkness fold over you like fur. The storm fades, the fire sighs, and the centuries dissolve. You sleep like a Viking, deeply, completely without worry, just warmth, rhythm, and the certainty that dawn will come. The fire has become a soft, pulsing glow, more memory than flame. The longhouse barely breathes now. Even the walls seem to sigh. You lie still, the furs heavy but comforting, and the air feels thick with quiet. Outside, snowflakes fall in slow motion, each one landing soundlessly against the frozen ground. Inside, only warmth remains, gentle, steady, infinite. Your body loosens into the timber beneath you. The heartbeat of the hearth fades into your own until the two are indistinguishable. The scent of smoke has become sweet and distant, and the world seems wrapped in velvet shadow. The night holds everything: fire and frost, sound and silence, life and rest, and for the first time, there's no need to choose between them. You think of the centuries that have passed since this place was built, and how fragile, how miraculous it all was. And yet, somehow, these people slept, deeply, peacefully, surrounded by storms. Maybe that's the lesson the North whispers to anyone still listening. That peace isn't found in comfort, but in rhythm, in trust, in surrender. The last ember collapses into ash, glowing for a breath, then fading. The darkness softens like the world itself, taking one long exhale. And in that breath, you drift away, calm, weightless, endless, like a candle going out.